Sunak, pay us more. 5, 6, 7, 8. We need you to negotiate.
Across the Thames from Parliament, striking nurses called on Rishi Sunak to negotiate. Instead, he announced a reorganisation of Whitehall.
Today I've created a brand new first-of-its-kind department for energy security and net zero, headed by one of our most capable and experienced ministers, Grant Shapps.
Maybe not that original. The government has, to some extent, returned things to how they were before the Conservatives changed them. In 2009, Gordon Brown split up the Department of Business to create a separate department for energy and climate change. 7 years later, Theresa May bundled them back together again and created a separate department for international trade to negotiate post-Brexit trade treaties. Today, Rishi Sunak bundled international trade back into the business department and split off energy again, giving it its own department. Rishi Sunak also set up a new department devoted to science, but failed to persuade Michael Gove to lead it. Some Tory MPs said the Prime Minister risked looking geeky and detached, focusing on machinery of government changes that could cost millions. And he probably should have just restricted himself to replacing the sacked party chairman, Nadhim Zahawi, removed from the government because of breaches of the ministerial code over his tax affairs.
Are your taxes in order?
Good morning, they most definitely are. Good morning, how are you?
Do you think you can win the next election?
Of course we will. We can and we will.
Greg Hands soon discovered he'll be joined at Conservative HQ by a new deputy chairman with a talent for getting in the headlines, Lee Anderson.
You're still a parasite, you're still a scrounger, and you're still a malignant.
In a WhatsApp group, Lee Anderson recently called the government blundering and likened it to the band playing on the Titanic. While Rishi Sunak was trying to refresh the government, the past was again back to haunt him. Today, Richard Sharp, appointed chairman of the BBC under Boris Johnson, was asked by MPs why he hadn't declared when going for that job that he'd discussed how a distant cousin of Boris Johnson's could help the then Prime Minister with a huge loan.
I gave no financial advice to the Prime Minister.
You did not disclose to this committee the fact that you were involved in making introductions which would result in a very large soft loan facility being made available to the very person responsible for appointing you to the job which was under consideration. How on earth did you think that was not a relevant matter to disclose to this committee?
Well, as I've described...
Do you regret it?
I'll come back to that particular... As I've described to you, I acted in good faith to ensure that due process was followed.
But do you not see why we might be unhappy about that?
With respect to the regret, obviously, I regret the situation. I particularly regret the situation for the BBC.
That's a non-regret, though, isn't it?
No, it's not. It's not at all.
Do you regret your actions in not telling the committee that you had been involved in this caper?
I took, at the time, as I told you, comfort from the conversation I had with Mr. Case.
A reference to Simon Case, the Cabinet Secretary. The committee's acting chair said no one came out of the saga well.
Could any of loan happened without you, Mr. Sharp?
Rishi Sunak said he believed the process to select Richard Sharp was rigorous and transparent.
Have a good day.